Okay.
Here we
This
go.
is great. It's great, isn't it?
There we go. There we go.
That's it. Brilliant. Okay. So what did we do in sprint 4? So as Kiri sort of alluded to, we've done a number of things looking at the design stream. We wanted to provide updates basically to Jardu, which is one of our existing sovereign site suppliers, regarding the front end changes they would need to rebrand some of our existing sites, and we've made some progress to that. We've also looked at what we would need to do to rebrand the other sites that are non-Jardu related. We've built designs for signposting flow into the design system as well. We've looked on the research and the user testing front. We've recruited and tested some staff and residents, and we've got we need more of you. So as Kiri said, please do sign up if you'd like to take part, or you know people that would. And we're getting ready for our beta test next month. So on around about the 15th of January, we'll have our 2 new sites up and running, and we need people to start testing them. We've also started to write content that's going to go into those beta sites. We reviewed the content management model, and we reviewed and written some user stories to inform our development. We've also, on the technical front, continued to implement the templates and components and prioritise those for the minimum viable products, and built them into the Drupal, which is the sort of back-end technical parts of the sites. We've also been working on our week notes, which is a communication and sort of tool that we can use, and we will have a Spark site, which is an online site that we'll be able to share content with you and updates regularly, looking at accessibility, URLs and more. But let me just go on to the next slide, please, Kiri. So this is just the indicative high-level project plan. So you can see where that green arrow is pointing. We're not quite halfway through, but we're coming up to that point. Sort of around in the beginning of January, we'll be at the halfway point in our sprints. During December, agreeing our MVP priorities was a big thing for us, as well building the test sites and the other things that I've mentioned. As again, on the 15th of January, we'll have 2 private beta minimum viable product sites that we'll be able to share with you, partly at the next show and tell. One thing I wanted to point out here is the website's unplanned change freeze that's taking place from the end of December. So important to note that, and important to ensure that you understand what process you would need to go through if you needed it in a sort of priority situation to make changes to your sites or to any e-forms. Thank you. If I could just, I think I need to pass over now to, I'm not sure who I'm passing over to, but it's week notes. So I think that must be you, Stuart. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Merry Christmas from Lapland or Dorset, wherever I am today. Go back a slide, please, Kiri. Yay. So briefly, Juliet touched on the fact we've been doing some week notes. I just wanted to briefly explain what week notes are. So week notes are basically just a blog about the work that we're doing, explaining what we've been up to, and generally you see them on a weekly basis, which is why they're called week notes. We plan to share our notes publicly so that people can learn about what we've been doing and share in our journey. I've put this graphic on the side of the slide, make things open, it makes things better. For those who've not come across them, the gov.uk design team have a set of design principles online. And this is actually principle number 10. And I guess it's based on the assumption that actually us sharing things openly does truly make them better. So the more eyes we have on a piece of work, the quicker we spot mistakes, and that we all raise the bar on the work we're doing. This project has already benefited from some week notes that have been shared by teams in Buckinghamshire when they were going through a similar journey. And it's something the team have a real ambition to do as we go through this project. We were hoping to start them earlier, but we haven't. So a little bit behind, but we've got a commitment. I guess our New Year's resolution is to get into the habit of publicly sharing our progress in the form of week notes as we move forward. So on the next slide, coming soon, as Juliet alluded to, we've got a new Spark site coming. It's nearly ready, but we're going to use that to publish these week notes publicly and also share our show and tell slides and outputs and other key messages about the project that we want to communicate as we move forward. But if you can't wait that long, I've put a link in the slides to our first set of week notes, which at the moment is just an open Google Doc So anybody with a link can open that and read our first set of notes. It's largely a catch up on everything that's happened from the start of the project till now. And then moving into the new year, various different members of the team will take it in turns to write a set of week notes. I've also put in a link to a thing called the Web of Week Notes. So if you're interested in week notes more generally, it's a thing that a lot of digital teams around government and public services do. There's a whole website that brings together a set of week notes from various different authors across the internet. So if you're interested in having a look on what else is going on around the country and sharing and building on other people's work, then it's a really nice place to start and get a handle on what week notes are. So I've put a link in for that as well. On to the next slide. Who is handling design system
It's
today?
me. Hi. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about the design system and the design updates from the sprint. Just to flag that on the theme of what Stu was just talking about in terms of working in the open, the design system itself is live. It's on that link on the slide right now, and it will update. It's obviously in progress, but every time we publish an update to it, it will update on that link. So it's completely open, but to caveat that with the fact that it's a development kind of in progress development. So it may be down every so often, it may change, things may break, but yeah, I'm going to quickly share my screen just to take you through a few updates. Can anyone shout if they can't see the screen? Because I haven't got much feedback
yes,
on my.
Can see it.
Cool, great. So as a quick update for if you haven't been here before, you or if you have, you may remember that we were working around one specific flow. As mentioned earlier, the kind of signposting flow of getting someone to a specific service, for example, finding your bin collection day, and then signposting off to the local area. So the goal for the immediate short-term goal is to get this as a standout flow built into the back end. So what we needed to do in order to get it built into the back end in a few weeks' time, we needed to be one step ahead of the back end development. So this is when I talk about back end, this is talking about getting all of this available for content publishers to be able to edit the content in Drupal and be able to create these pages and order the pages and things like that. So what we need to do on the design side of things is to obviously design these things, which we did like 2 or 3 sprints ago. But now the next thing is building them into the design system so that they can be used in the actual site. So you may remember that these 2 example pages. One of these is in North and one of these is in West, as I'm showing. So what we've been doing is building out every single little thing as its own component, which can then be used as building blocks to create these pages. So these 2 pages are actually examples within the design system of what a full page could be like, created using lots of individual pages. So what you can actually see here is that I'm actually inside the design system seeing an example page. Right now I'm in full screen. So if I click off of full screen, you can see I'm back in the design system, which you might recognize. This is this storybook, which we're using to host the design system. So we have some example pages, as I've just been showing. So these can, as I've shown before, these can be tested across different screen sizes quite easily within here. You can see iPhone 5, iPads, etc. You can test out. You can, as I've shown before, you can test it against different kind of visual issues, like what people with different colorblind types would see the website as. You can automatically test for accessibility. as I showed before. So it flags if there's any violations against a set of criteria. And again, you can switch themes between the North and the West to see how each of these pages, how each of this set of content might look using the color scheme and the typography from each of the North and West. Just to show, so each of these pages is built up from a set of components, and all of these components need to be built. So what you'll see is this library section, which the main focus right now has been what we're calling structural components, which are what essentially build up the page. So these will be generated by the backend essentially automatically. So a content editor doesn't need to worry about, say, the header and the footer, which you can see here, the different variations of them. And they don't need to worry about things like breadcrumbs, because this will be automatically created depending on where that page is placed. There's lots of other little things like the kind of containers needed to create the pages, containers for accessibility, and things like that signposting links block that we were just showing a second ago. And you can see the kind of switch between North and West. So the next focus ongoing will be on slices, which at the moment we don't have many of. So slices we've talked about before, but they are essentially, these are the things that a content editor will have control over in order to create a page. So they can place a slice. So in this example, this is a call to action, so it's a button, but there may be a slice for an image, or a slice for an embedded video, or many other things like that. And then finally, the last one here is components, and these are very, very small things. So say, for example, a heading. And the other thing I haven't shown is that we can also add documentation alongside this. So we can explain how to use components, and you can see what kind of properties that exist within a component, and then you can see examples of that component in stories, as they're called. But yes, we could also see things like the beginnings of basic components such as inputs, and more advanced components such as the postcode search, which has more in-depth interactions with the ability to kind of drop down more information and search a postcode, things like that. So that's it from an update from the design system. I'll pass over to Lee to actually talk about how these can be implemented into the Drupal backend.
Yeah, sure. If you can load up the development stream slide first. Next slide. Yep. So as Chris mentioned, we initially worked with the front end, back end, and the design system on our local environments. We now have it up and running on one of the hosting environments. We've added the signposting to the service pages. We started initial work on the service landing page and the sections, and we've completed work on the footer component with links controlled within Drupal itself. I'm just going to share my screen now to go through a quick demo. Hopefully you can all see my screen. If you can't, just yell. So obviously this is the front end. As Chris mentioned, this is the design system all hooked up. We go back to Drupal now. We find our page. So for example, if we want to add a call to action underneath here, we just simply press enter. Go to the slices, click on the slice you want to embed. I'll put Google in as an example. You do create and place. That will place it within the content. Then you click save and close. And then when you go back to here, the content button slice that you've added is now within the service page. I will also show you now the progress on the signposting. So you just literally just add a signposting block. You select what council you're going to point to. I'll leave it blank for now. I'll put in test title, and if I save and close that, if I refresh back to the front page, then you've got the start of the block for the signposting. Again, if you want to go back and add in another council, you click edit, go to signposting, add a signpost, select a different council, put in a link, or you can leave it blank to go back to the chosen council's homepage. Click save and close again, and then it populates into the list, and so forth and so forth. So that's basically where we are with the service page at the moment. The next one we should be able to show in future will be the service landing page, and that will revolve more around the actual how the pages group together, how they appear and link on the homepage, drag and drop in ordering of the sections, and various other things. So now I'll pass you back to Connolly.
Thanks, everyone. So we've had a busy, I guess, few weeks trying to get as many residents and staff members testing our prototypes. So I'll just give you a quick snapshot into what we've done. So over the last, I think, 3 sprint show and tells, we've been talking about, I guess, the actual interviews and some insights. And in the first initial show and tells, we talked about the plan. So in this show and tell, in sprint 4, we actually did a synthesis session, which is basically analyzing and making sense of what we learned from users. And then as we were going through each sprint, we're feeding this information to different teams. So one of the teams is Lee's development team, as from a staff and content perspective, as well as Chris and Hannah from the design and front end build, in terms of how we'd like the pages to look and how the users would like the pages to look. And ultimately as well, we're speaking with the comms team, and some of the learnings we're having from speaking with residents about the website actually open up and tell us a little bit more about the wider change of unitaries. So a quick slide, a quick insight into the summary that we have is, so in December, so far we've had 10 different sessions, about 60 minutes. Some go a little bit over, depending on the kind of like last comments and things like that. But ultimately, like we said in the previous sprint, we've been testing predominantly 2 journeys. So one of the journeys is the bin flow. So basically the task is, you're a Corby resident, you land on this page, please let us know and talk aloud as you click through the prototype to find the bin collection day. So you can see there we've got one of our users, Leslie, who consented to having her picture in our show and tell deck. So that's the prototype there of the front page, as lots of users call it, or the home page or the landing page. And then they work through that. So all of the users were able to actually complete that journey. So there was no task failure. And some participants did notice the redirection from the, I guess they call it the green site. So this is the future Northants site that you can see as a screenshot there. And then they actually got told to go to Corby, and you'll see what Lee was demonstrating in terms of the links out. So the signposting, they had to click on Corby and it took them out to actually Corby's local site. Most noticed, there's some people that didn't notice the change and didn't realize they're in the local site, but were able to find where they would get their bins. But yeah, they'd noticed the color blue because the local authority website for Corby's blue. They noticed that the font changed a little bit, that it wasn't definitely a massive impact. So we're going to continue to test that in our testing in January. The second task that we tested was for users to file a generic complaint. And we did touch on it last week, but it was interesting. A lot of users said they were just use the search bar and just type in complaint because they noticed as they scrolled up and down on the homepage, there wasn't a way to actually see the word complaint, and they said that they thought that that was something that the council had done on purpose. So then they would click through the contact us either in the footer and go all the way through to the form to actually then make a complaint. And we had some really interesting feedback that we're going to be sharing in the new year in terms of how users would like to hear back from the council, and actually as the service from the compliments complaints teams. That's just quite insightful. We had tested a feature which is basically you go to the Corby site and then it takes you back to the green site or the future Northamptonshire site, and And what we found is that there's a pop-up which says, would you like to save Corby or your location? It could be Daventry, whatever it is. Would you like to save it for future? And it looks like most users, about 8 of them knew what to expect. 2 of them were a bit confused by it. So it's definitely something that the project team are going to park for vesting day, but potentially something that could be added to the website roadmap. From colors and icons, this is something, as most people know, it's quite subjective. So the website team inherited the look and feel and what the elements of the branding in the design. So the colors, the green, from the branding team. Most people liked that actually the west and the north side when we tested the blue west. So Chris, I think, was showing you that earlier, and the green. They actually liked that it was identical. And they said that some users may have to go to both for different services that may actually be across. So that was really interesting to see. And we're still testing icons throughout. There's been a bit of a mix. I think I'd say roughly 9 of the 10 preferred the icons due to they like some of the quotes were from an accessibility perspective or if English wasn't my first language, I would be looking for the picture of the bin perhaps. And they also liked the fact that on the mobile prototype, the icons were able to be there with the heading of the text. But yeah, the final insight that we had was the medium to low awareness of the unitary change. So one of the first questions we do after we talk about and get to set the scene of the interview, we just ask them, do they know from April 1st which authority they'll be referring to? Will it be the West or the North? And there's middle to low awareness of what that is. And we asked them in terms of like, do they think their immediate friends or family would know and things like that? And I think at the moment it's in the back of people's minds because of Brexit and COVID and Christmas. So I think it's something that I'm going to be chatting with the comms team, some few findings that we've had and comments that we've had from residents to help them in the new year. Slide. So one thing to note is we actually did a synthesis session and it was interesting. So of the 10 users, a lot of them were saying the same things. So that the navigation and then that the way that the page is laid out is quite simple. It's easy to use. It's user friendly. These are things that have been noted down by the note takers in the interview. And I think the big question with user testing is how many people do you actually have to speak with? And this is just a bit of a chart from Nielsen Norman Group. He's kind of the godfather, I guess, of user research. And he's basically did a few analysis on the fact that once you speak between like say 5 to 7 people, you've actually uncovered 85% of usability issues. So you'll start to hear kind of like a repeat of things. And this is specifically from qualitative research. So from these kind of like one-to-one interviews. So we are going to continue to kind of like understand and learn from the 2 journeys from when we do the testing in January. But we're going to start to also then look to test a few new journeys now that we've actually uncovered most of the key things and learnings from the journeys we've tested in December. Slide. So yeah, just a quick one. So some of you may go, what is a synthesis session? Well, here's a quick screenshot of a session that Sue, Fiona, Ale and I had. And basically there's no point in 2 people going away and speaking to different residents and then taking notes if those notes don't go anywhere. So it was a discussion to allow everyone that took part of the research to basically come up to speed and understand if there are things being echoed in different sessions and try to understand and actually start to put together those aha moments or what we call insights to go, oh, they said that, but they really clicked on this section. And so it was a great first session in Sprint 4, and we look to have another session as we continue testing in January. Slide. And so I think I'm going to echo Juliet and Stuart and Kiri, who have basically said, we need your help. So we're looking to recruit residents. And so I'm sure you may know friends or family. We're looking to recruit people who are currently living and residing in Corby, East Northants, Kettering, Wellingborough, Daventry, Northampton and South Northants. There's a link to register your interest here and on the screenshot. Thank you so much to Craig and to Sarah and Richard for helping getting this live. So you can actually see on the website a screenshot of the actual messaging, and we're going to hope to roll this out across social media and also the 8 local authority websites throughout early January to try and build up our kind of like a research team from all the way from testing that happens in January all the way up until vesting day and potentially beyond. Slide. I'm going to hand over to Ale to talk to you all about content design.
Thank you. So content design principle, this is something we have been started to work on. And what we mean by this is a set of principles that they can really guide us when we write new content, or when we think about new content for new pages, or when we want to review existing content. So the idea of this principle is to bring alignment and consistency across content and channels possibly as well. So we started a draft because these principles are GDS principles. They are like always the same because they are all related to the idea of writing good content. So we started a draft, and then David and Stephen will keep working on this and then share and circulate as soon as possible. But just to give you like a preview of them, we're working on principles that say something around start with user needs. So start thinking about what is the user need of the person that is going to access the content and what they're trying to do. Design for everyone. So design for accessible content. Don't duplicate. So if the content is already somewhere else on other safe and reliable websites, government website, for example, you don't need to duplicate the content. You can refer and link back to this because that will make it even easier to maintain it over time. Consistency across channels is about making sure that what we say on the website is consistent to what we have on leaflets, to what we share on social media. Agile design is the idea of being able, as you've been seeing, like we've been prototyping quickly solutions and prototyping like how the idea will appear on the website and on the handover to the summon site and so on. The same thing applies to content design. So we can test different content and different flows with people. That's something that we will possibly do during the private beta and see how people iterate with that, interact with that, and then iterate it. And then the last thing is about building digital services, not websites. So we have to think end to end. We don't have to just think, okay, there's a page here, I'm going to solve and crack on with this content specifically here. But we have to consider what is the overall experience really. Slide, please. Another thing we've been doing is we've been taking some step forward with the content operating model. So step one was we have been having a conversation with content writers and content leads, and we have drafted a possible model that could work, that we believe could work. And then from the model, we have been having conversation with the dev team to actually write up user stories and requirements for Drupal so that the two are actually matched up, and what we have designed the model represents what we are now building on Drupal. For the private beta, the good news is that David and Stephen will start using Drupal to upload the content, possibly supported by the core team, because there will be possibly some content that will need uploading. And then we will share and provide like a demo and get feedback from the wider audience throughout the private beta. But for now, there will be the main two people having access to it. I'm going to pass over to Stephen.
So this is all on David, not me, but I'll show off about it. David has contacted all the relevant departments to get that initial content ready for the beginning of January. In terms of information governance, that's kind of been pushed back a little bit, and we're looking more at bin information. If anyone's ever worked in customer services at one of your councils, that is one of the biggest items a customer will complain or query about. So it's quite good that we're using that as one of the first steps, because it's kind of critical that we get that right. And then just a randomly small update, homepage images, they're still being looked at and implemented, so they're going to be slightly delayed, but next big update should come in January. for everything.
Yeah, so URLs. So what are URLs? So these are the web addresses that you will see both on the website and different pages where they're linking to other parts of pages, or also on correspondence that you might send out to the customer. So key things like council tax bills or benefits bills. Also, we'll need addresses on our invoices that go out to our customers. So one of the things we've been trying to do is identify what the key URLs are that we need to make a decision on before vesting day so that they can be put on correspondence. And you may be aware that we sent a questionnaire out, initial questionnaire, to try to understand what the needs might be before vesting day. So we're working our way through that content at the moment, but it includes a number of links that we probably won't need until much later on, actually. I mean, so on vesting day, a lot of the sites' URLs will remain as they are, but it's important that we get the right ones onto things like our bills and invoice statements. So we have made a decision on the ERP invoicing URL. So you can see them here, westnorthants.gov.uk/pay and northnorthants.gov.uk/pay as the top level page where they'll be printed on the invoice where the supplier will go. And this is where, or the customer, I should say, will go, and where they will be routed through to the right place. And this is a top level page on those sites, and it'll most likely route them back to a page on a sovereign site or a new page on the new site, depending on what kind of thing they're trying to pay for. We're working through other payment URLs for council tax and benefits, and these are going to be needed early in the new year. So what's next for us is working through with service areas during our content discussion meetings to agree what other ones might need to be updated and what ones can be left as is on the day. So thank you. Next slide, please. And I'm just handing over to Rob to talk about accessibility.
Yeah, hello. Next slide, please. Our first piece of third-party software has been confirmed. We're going to be having ModernGov, who've been chosen for the committee management information system for members. We know there are currently some accessibility issues with the way that the committee documents are produced within ModGov, and they are aware and they hope to have these remedied for vesting day, but it's something that we need to be aware of. So if there is still something wrong with it, we need to make sure that that appears on our accessibility statements. The existing sovereign councils will keep their current accessibility statements beyond vesting day and amend as necessary until the sites disappear. And LGSS L&D have or will be producing an accessibility training module based on the editor training guide put together by NCC following their audit by the Shore Trust, which is very good, and hopefully the L&D can make something good out of it. The current or the accessibility statements, we've got the bare bones of them on those links there. So there are yellow parts highlighted, which are known things that will need to be changed at some point, and other parts will need to be amended as and when more information becomes available. That's it. So I'll pass over to Richard for a microsite update.
Thanks, Robert. So one of the things that we'll have to look at as part of the project is all the microsites that the different councils have got, and put a policy in place around when services are allowed microsites, where they get built, what technology we use for them, branding decisions, all that kind of thing. So although this won't affect anything for vesting date, we're looking to get that policy in place, release the draft version of it for the end of January, and we'll be talking to every council's web team about that, and the communications team. Probably put some workshops in to work through how we're going to look to do that in the future. So one for post vesting date, but it is a big piece of work to look at how we approach that. So we'll keep people posted on that. And then it's over to Connolly now to talk about what we're going to do in Sprint 5.
Thanks, Richard. Slide. So technically, we're today still in Sprint 4. So in terms of what our Sprint 5 goal is. Watch this space, to be confirmed. We have our sprint planning session tomorrow, but ultimately Sprint 5 is stretched, so it's going to be all the way up until mid-January. So we've got Thursday the 24th of December to Wednesday the 13th of January. Obviously with the holidays and leave and things, we've just decided to stretch it out. So rather than 2 weeks, we'll see you again in 3 weeks for the show and tell. So the next show and tell is penciled in for the Thursday the 14th, and the key focus for all of the work streams will be for the private beta and having those 2 MVPs ready for testing. Slide. Here's a sneak peek into some of the advent calendar that Kiri spoke to you about before. So this is kind of like the top line indicative goals that we plan to have, but working in Agile, these things may kind of like slightly adjust. Slide. And just before I hand you over to the best Christmas host that you've ever seen in all of Great Britain, does anyone have any questions?